Welcome, everyone, to the MikeDrop podcast. This is episode 21, which is a debrief of our latest recording. I am Mike Truesdell, and I am joined in the same location with Mike Compitello.
What's up? We exist. How great is this?
This is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm so stoked.
This is the first time that we've been together in the same space.
Yes. Let's see what kind of tech failure awaits us today.
I can't believe it. Yeah, so we are here because I don't even know where to look. We have too many places to look.
Too many places to look.
I should look at the person, right? I'm so used to seeing you on Zoom.
Yeah. I'm so used to just being on Twitter while we talk. Browsing for drumsticks.
Right. Do you have the pad below the desk? That's what that sound was.
Yeah.
The whole time.
I've just been claiming it was lawnmowers, but they sound a lot like double laterals.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we just came back late last night. From a recording session with the great Ryan Straber, previous guest of the show.
Episode 8 or whatever it was.
Yeah, and we thought we would just talk about that experience a little bit and what it was like to record whatever it is that we recorded.
Yeah.
And because it was kind of a fun experience. For me, it was fun because it was sort of time to put into practice a lot of the stuff I've learned from this podcast about how to prepare for things.
Yeah.
Especially things from you about being prepared.
Oh, no.
I wasn't prepared, but I thought about being prepared the whole time.
I don't know. It's hard to be prepared for a recording.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do it.
No.
But I feel like what Ryan was saying really helps, right? And I know what we were doing was practicing the easy spots too, and that kind of stuff like that. I thought was really, really helpful.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, it's also critical. Wait, should we just go through the steps? Should we go through in an order?
Maybe we should say what we did.
Okay.
Maybe
Okay.
start with the W's.
Okay.
Who, what, where, why.
Here's the
when, Weetabix.
Yeah. Yeah. Wix.com.
Wix. Please sponsor us.
Okay. So who?
Us.
Us.
Plus Ryan Straber
Ryan
of
Straber.
Octaven Audio in Mount Vernon, New York.
Yep. And he was. You may not know how critical the engineer is in the recording process. Mm-hmm. Critical.
Some might say essential.
Essential.
And as we were talking about with Ryan, he also serves the function of a producer. And so he was even spotting typos in the music that we were recording, which is kind of absurd.
It's amazing.
So, yeah. So the two of us plus Ryan.
Yep.
Where?
Octaven Audio,
Yes.
Mount Vernon, New York.
Yes. And this was exciting because this is a place both of us have recorded individually or with other people, but never with each other. And it's a great studio. If you're in classical music, you've probably been there in New York to some degree, maybe.
And he does video too, right? I mean, we're given the pitch. We should really pitch.
We're trying to get Octaven to sponsor us.
I would put an advertisement like right here.
Yes.
I wonder if we can like put it over the
banner. It's just his face now, Octaven, the same font.
Yeah, Ryan Drop. Yeah. I'm sure that we'll fix that in post.
That's right. Yeah. So, but what was cool about this trip is that we know Ryan as a connoisseur of gear. He has these incredible vintage microphones. Oh. He has, great analog board, but he somehow has over the years has been acquiring drums. So you'll go visit him and he has all these great vintage drums. And then the last time he said, I have Peter Erskine's drum set now, which is great. I have this awesome snare drum. That's great. But then this time we emailed him and said we were going to come recording. He said, do you want to use our xylophone?
Right.
Yes.
It's this xylophone that I don't think it's technically his, but
yes.
But he let us use it, and it was such a beautiful instrument.
It's currently under his care.
It's under his care.
A Leedy xylophone, and we spent maybe too much time putting this thing together because it was in these cases, and it's in this sort of art deco frame.
Yep.
Which is all hinges on a like 1 centimeter long screw that we could not find.
It may or may not be metric.
Yeah, and so we were trying to move this thing, and it would just keep splitting open. But you ended up using it for this recording.
Yeah, I did.
Which was really cool.
Yep.
And then he also in his care had a vibraphone, a
Dang.
Musser Century Vibe.
Yes.
And it just so happened that Mike T had brought with him a Marimba One vibraphone,
That's
which I
right.
guess is based exactly on the Century Vibe.
Yeah.
So we used the bars.
Yeah, you can take the bars off of a Century, and it should work exactly on the Marimba One vibe frame.
Yeah.
And I've done this in the past, and it's just like the best of all worlds.
Okay.
Like the Marimba One bars are pretty good.
Yeah,
Like they sound
sound
really
good.
good, and they obviously work really well for what they do. But it's hard to match that like old metal, like that really hard, compressed, beat up metal that the Century Vibe like has, and it gets that like just extra little tinge of warmth. So if you've got a Century Vibe, or even just the bars of it, and you're looking to have a frame for it, you can just I don't know if you can do this, but we think it would be nice to buy the frame from Marimba One, and buy the bars too. They're really good. But if you have the Century Vibe bars, you can put those right on the frame, and they sound amazing, and you don't have the problem of that old Musser frame.
Yeah. And so next W, what were we doing?
Well, we don't know if all of this is going to be released. Like, we can't guarantee, but should we say proper nouns?
Maybe we should, like what we did. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult to talk.
Yeah, I think so. Okay. Okay. So
yeah.
anyway, bye everybody.
Next time. So the main mission of this was to record our theme music.
Yep.
Again.
Yep. And you've probably heard it at the beginning and the end. We have 2 different pieces. And can I let everybody in behind the scenes of how that worked? So maybe 3 or 4 years ago, 2020-ish, maybe, in the summer of 2020, was it?
2021.
2021. Okay, so summer of 2021. I was gonna say I didn't feel like it was like in the middle of it.
Yeah.
But the summer of 2021, you came here to this very space that was pre-Flag.
Yeah. Yeah. BF.
BF.
It was about 3 years BF.
Yeah, BF.
Before Flag.
Yeah. and now we're AF.
AF. We are cool AF.
We are cool. Flag AF.
AF. Great.
Yeah, right. And we're canceled.
Yeah.
But I think we just had to click that button on YouTube that's like not made for kids.
Is there a button that says like skip ahead 1 minute until these people find their bearing?
Yeah. I wonder if we could put the timestamps for the W's. It's
That's
just like W 102, W 506.
I have a feeling that would be really helpful.
Yeah. Wait till we get to the H.
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah. So I came here to rehearse. We just decided we were going to learn some music.
I think so.
Right? And
You were on your way.
I was on my way to record videos
Yep.
somewhere in Philly.
Yep.
And you said, what if, instead of doing traditional percussion duos, what if we play some old music?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we started bouncing ideas off of one another, and we both got really into this piece by Rameau, the Cyclops.
I think you found it, maybe.
Yeah, it was one of my favorite
was
pieces.
Was it a Sokolov recording that you found?
No, you found the Sokolov, and I was listening to this Trevor Pinnock harpsichord.
Okay.
And then you suggested this Couperin piece called Le Tic Toc.
Because of TikTok.
Yeah.
Right.
And then, you said, well, I do have an arrangement of this 16th century counterpoint or mensural notation exercise for 2 voices and voice. So maybe we could do that too.
Yeah.
But I do remember we spent a lot of time reading pieces.
Oh.
We tried to read every Scarlatti sonata.
We drop in the bucket. We got through.
We made it like through 30 in a day.
Out of 600 and however many there are.
We couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So that it just sounded interesting.
Yeah.
Right?
And we played a Zoom concert for our parents.
Yeah, it was Father's Day.
Father's Day.
So we had 2 dramatically different responses from our family.
Both supportive in their own way.
Yes, both supportive. And then we're off to the races. And
right. But during that time, we did some like just fun reference recordings of these pieces. And then, fast forward to last summer, we started talking to each other for the podcast, and I felt like, okay, we should have some intro outro music.
Yeah.
But the intro outro music, the only thing we really had
was
this stuff that we recorded in the basement, and so we wanted to like do it right with somebody who knows what they're doing. And yeah, like we were saying, we can keep praising Ryan Straber all day, but in addition to just being this amazing audio engineer and running the studio, he's also this scholar of music from a ton of different eras. But he loves early music. He loves different avenues of Baroque music. And
yeah, but I got there before Mike T did.
Yeah.
And we spent about 30 minutes just looking at
Neumann
Neumann book about Baroque ornamentation, which became valuable mere hours later.
Yeah, right. Yeah, let's go back to the videotape.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think there was also this desire that, there's plenty of music for percussion duo.
Yep.
And we had sort of started by doing some more theatrical music.
Yep.
And I thought, well, what can you add to the repertoire, or what can you add to the world as two percussionists? You just want to play the same thing as other people? No. And to be honest, transcriptions or adaptations, as you would call them, or Nancy would call them,
Thanks,
was not a part of my training in college. And so it became really fun to think about, well, how can we bring these to life in a way that's not just like, I'll take the bottom, you take the top, see you at the end.
Right.
And so I remember you got really creative with some of them. And then for this session, we decided we were going to do one more piece. And so you had suggested this Scarlatti Sonata that we had never done before, based purely on this Marta Argerich recording.
Oh my gosh.
Which is probably the single fastest recording of piano I've ever heard in my life.
But I think no matter like what instrument you play, or even if you don't play an instrument, I think if you say, hey, we're playing the Scarlatti Sonata, everyone we've told says, is it the Argerich one?
Yeah.
Like
totally.
Everybody who even, it just happened the other day.
Yeah.
We saw someone down in downtown Ithaca.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, is it the Argerich one? Like there's 600 whatever of these sonatas.
Yeah.
But this is the famous one because Martha Argerich just plays the crap out of it.
Yeah, she's pretty freaking
good. And she's played it her whole career as an encore.
Yeah.
It's that D minor.
Yeah.
K141.
K141.
Yeah, I don't want to get too numbery on this, but
no. The K is not based. It's not Scarlatti. It's like the name of the guy who did it.
Yeah, like the Kuschel number.
Yeah,
for
I kind
Mozart.
of want to know.
Is it Kirkpatrick?
Yeah, I want to know what I have to do to get an M number.
Okay, who should we catalog?
Joel Rothman.
We're gonna catalog the Rothman books.
Yeah.
This is it's the M.
Duet yourself.
M550.
Yeah. What's something that I have access to that nobody else has access to?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway,
that's gonna be really
just
tricky.
taking us off the track here. So we decided we were going to do that, and at some point, I think you had said that you were interested in recording older music anyway.
Yeah.
And it's always been something that's part of your repertoire. You had just said you did some Beethoven, which to me is like impossible.
It's the slow movement.
That's too far. It's like the uncanny valley for me. I'd be too scared to do Beethoven. It's too difficult.
Because it's too far ahead.
Yeah, I could only do obscure Baroque music, something that nobody has ever heard before. I'd be fine with that.
Because you're on a little bit of a project with the Baroque composers.
I am, but it's more pedagogical in nature. But yeah, and you said you were doing some Orlando Gibbons.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yeah. So I've got 3 videos that are recorded with the 410 gents.
Sponsor us.
And they but yeah, so those videos haven't been out yet, but I'm sure that when this video gets released, they'll be close. We'll be close.
It's cool
to having them out because I think they're done. They just need to be put on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I got interested in recording this. There's a slow movement of Beethoven Opus 81A piano sonata, the Les Adieux sonata, this Orlando Gibbons Fantasia, and the final unfinished contrapunctus of Art of Fugue. So I've recorded those, filmed the videos with 410, and it's like all the same time that we were kind of percolating this idea. Maybe I can even give a shout out to a friend of mine from school, Caleb Hudson, who's this phenomenal trumpet player based in Austin, I think now. So hi to Caleb. He just put out an album that was so inspiring and included some Baroque music and some new music and things. And so I got really amped about, we were going to do it anyway, I think, but I just got really amped about, making this a valid project. Like, it really validated what we were doing. And it's fun to like go down that rabbit hole and like speak the same language as all these other instruments that have been around for a lot longer.
Yeah. And maybe it's just age for me, but I don't feel as, when I was in college, and also because of my teachers, there was this notion of like your time would be better spent developing repertoire for your instrument.
Sure.
Like you should not be doing this because we need you sort of on the front lines, producing armaments and stuff. And now, it's something has unlocked a little bit, or it's unclenched, and it's kind of nice.
Yeah.
It's nice to see. And so we decided we were going to do that. Yeah. And then somehow you decided you wanted to play xylophone, which is a decision that I don't think
you've never
I've never voluntarily said, you know what I would like? Xylophone.
Yeah. Let me get into this really finicky, short instrument.
Yeah. It's a machine gun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what we said we were going to do.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the why and the where.
And the what.
And the what.
Right.
When, now.
When, now. To whom? Sorry, everyone.
Yeah, sorry, we're a little loose. But I mean, maybe some person listening. We had one person say they listened. Maybe some person listening might want to know, like, well, what happens in these kind of classical music recording sessions? Because they're kind of different than a pop music session.
I think so.
And they're different than like a jazz session.
I think so.
And so what does it take? What's it like the schedule of a day for something that we're doing? So keep in mind, we're not recording a lot of music compared to other people.
Yeah.
Our general competency level puts us at 10 to 15 minutes of music per day.
Per day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but what's the schedule like?
Okay, so I think something that was important to us was not setting up the instruments and lifting all that heavy stuff on the day. So going down the day before, loading in, getting the heavy stuff out of the car, setting up a little bit, having the night to rest, and then getting into the studio kind of early, warming up, getting a feel for the space. So I think that was a critical part. And then afterwards, we just loaded up and revved the engines.
Goodness, yeah. So then we decided, so we booked the time and we decided, well, what piece are we going to record first? So what goes into the calculation for what we're going to do first?
Okay, so what we were talking about were things like how familiar are we with the piece, how relatively like mentally, physically taxing is the piece, those were kind of the two big ones, right?
Yeah.
Also, we talked about length. So we recorded Couperin first, and that was because we knew it. We had done it before. It was a little bit scary for me because it's kind of a xylophone 16th note arpeggio thing. Like notes really
look
matter.
Out, Ithaca College students. Yeah, someone's coming for you. So I think it was sort of like eating the frog, so to speak, like doing the hard thing first.
Yeah, but it wasn't the hardest. I think that we both agreed that there were harder things in the later in the menu, but the getting that out of the way is like a real big, like heavy lift to get that first one. And I know for me, like to be totally honest, like speak to the truth here. I guess I was the truth in school, but.
Okay. Yeah. Got it.
But speaking to honesty, like I got in there and I felt really good. Like I was feeling really awesome. We were running through stuff. Ryan was getting sound levels, and I felt like I could really do something with the music on the day. And you don't always feel like that, but I felt really good. And then we started the recording process, and my nerves really took over for the first 15 or 20 minutes.
Wow.
Like I was having these weird like brain skips, and I couldn't remember the part, or I would like play a section from another tune, which hasn't happened in forever. So all of those things that, everybody out there deals with, I was right there with you. And so I was lucky enough that it only lasted for like 15 or 20 minutes. And then once we actually got into the grind of doing the piece a few times, then I started to settle down and I could actually start to shape it the way I could before we turned the red light on. But it's
terrifying.
It was wild.
I'll say, full disclosure, I get extremely nervous recording. Like it feels like my hands are in cement all the time. Like I cannot do a technical thing. Something happens.
Yeah,
it's not overt nerves. You don't think I'm really nervous in the way you are at a live concert. There's something that maybe you just start to focus on something different than you normally do.
Yeah.
You start to think about tiny sounds like, oh, am I breathing or what's going on? And something really just at least throws me off. I don't have those kind of ice blood, so I knew it was going to be a stressful thing. But I think a big challenge when you're recording, and the reason why, I think we're both sort of loyal people with engineers is that with percussion, it takes a while to sort of get dialed into the sound that you want. Yeah. For example, the marimba is it's got kind of confusing overtones and confusing resonance, so it can be challenging to record. Yep. Xylophone
records really well.
Yeah.
But it can record too well sometimes, right?
That's right.
If you're doing xylophone marimba. So I chose one of the things Ryan and I talked about right at the beginning, I think you were there, was how brilliant should the xylophone be? Like, should it be its characteristic, like, really bright orchestral xylophone sound, or should it be a little bit closer to the way the marimba sounds? And one of the things that we were talking about was I did so much in my playing to try to eliminate the brilliance of the xylophone. There's like kind of concrete choices, like which mallets am I going to hold? And then there's a little bit more nuanced choices, like what stroke am I going to use? And like, how am I going to shape these phrases? Am I going to do it with this dynamic? And then what instrument? Like, we're going to use the leady xylophone for the Couperin because I want it to be this like really warm thing, and then the Scarlatti has like a little bit of bite to it, so we're gonna not use the warm instrument, but I'm still gonna use a mallet that has a lot of color choices. I used covered mallets for both of those pieces.
Cool.
So yeah, that was a really fun thing to dial in those sounds. And then once we get in the cart is way in front of the horse right now, but like once we get the into the mixing and editing side of things, then we can start to figure out which microphones we're going to use. Like, there's closer mics that are these old like RCA mics, right? And then there's kind of like these ribbon room mics, and then he came in and put some other ones. It's really our embarrassment
of riches, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think it takes longer than you think. I think when you first start recording with people that you have a relationship with or want to have a relationship with, there's a lot of like, let me play this and then let's go listen. It's never 10 a.m. we're starting to work for real. It's like we're checking how this sounds. Maybe this should be a little different. Maybe this should be a little different.
Move the microphone. Move the instrument.
Change mallets. I mean, I think you brought something like 800 pairs of mallets to this session.
Yeah, we had like 10 mallet bags.
That's right. Yeah. Just because you never know how things sound up close versus how they sound far away.
Yeah.
And
being flexible enough to make the switch too, right?
Ooh, like you switched mallets mid-session.
Mid-session, yeah. And that's so much of what the recording process is about, because really it's not about capturing like one little or capturing an entire whatever thing. It's about it capturing like something that's going to live on forever, and so you kind of want it to be as good as possible, even if that means a little bit more stress in the moment. And usually the stress comes from the what's behind door number 2. Right? Like, okay, we got in there and we realized those aren't the right notes.
Or
yeah. Right? Didn't you have something where you came in and you said, oh my gosh, like
I learned the wrong note.
I learned the wrong note, but then you made the switch right away, and it's very tough to do, especially in those high pressure situations.
I think so.
So you have to prepare with that in mind, right?
Yes.
Practice.
There's also a certain type of preparation that I think is still I want to be better at doing, which is the ability do these small chunks that are required in recordings, and to repeat
lot of
something
times.
with a really specific goal. Like,
Yeah.
let's do it again, but make sure you hit the note A instead of B.
That's a specific
Saying that to
goal.
me is like saying, just mess up again.
Yeah.
There's no way I'll get it
Yeah,
if you
right.
were like, what we're aiming for is for you not to mess up there.
Right,
Like,
and then
oh no.
somebody comes up, takes the note A out of the keyboard, and then your turn.
Yeah. Like,
Wait, do I hit it?
So that is something that's real sort of front of mind for me is the ability to do these targeted things over and over
again. Yeah.
and be able to stick it. And so whenever you listen back, I still, no matter how much I record myself at home, it still feels really different.
Yeah.
Can you articulate how it feels different in a studio, or when you're listening to yourself back, or?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like listening to your own voice, right?
Yeah.
For me, the hardest thing is opening up the file on the computer. Like
You double click.
Wait a second. I don't know how to turn it on.
Yeah.
But yeah, right. I mean, that's the hardest thing is like sitting down there. Number one, maybe making the time, but really it's your head, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just saying like, you don't want to get in there because you know all of the nitty gritty things that went weird or like you're not happy with. And you kind of are scared about getting confronted with all of these problems, which are actually little portals to these like psychological issues that we have.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, I've been dealing with, so playing accurate notes, right? I've been dealing with that since I was a kid, and maybe somebody out there has like a teacher, right, who really was harping on them and it was a traumatic experience or something. And then all of a sudden you're in the recording studio and the producer comes on the loudspeaker and says, hey, those notes aren't right. And then all of a sudden you're starting to feel that same feeling you had with the teachers, or it's that self-talk that you've had and so all of a sudden all this stuff happens, and then maybe you tense up, and then once you've tensed up, then
it's over.
That's going to be really tough to get the thing that you really want.
Yeah.
And that's the session. I mean, the session only happens for this finite amount of time. You booked it, you're paying a bunch of money per hour. And if you're in there locked up, so, I mean, that's really the benefit of having a great producer, right? Is somebody who can say the things that need to be said, but make you feel optimal.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was a little bit of a rant. Sorry.
That was a positive rant, I guess.
Good,
yeah,
good.
I don't know. I think it becomes the next thing that was sort of on my mind about a session like this is like then the editing.
Yep.
So classical music editing can go a couple different ways. I think the way that I've done stuff with Ryan, which is sort of more of a low budget endeavor, which is that the people recording, the artists, go through all of the takes and then decide what takes you want to use where.
Yep.
Like the edit map,
Yep.
so to speak. Sorry, this sounds really basic, I guess, but the edit map. And so that means you're sort of listening to all the takes. And if you have a producer with you, the producer you hope has sort of written, okay, this take was good, this take was good. But the thing that always gets me is that it's essentially the inverse of what you're feeling in a live concert. So Ryan made that comment yesterday. I can fix almost anything. So you should feel more free than you would at home. But you start to fixate on things that are really big deals in live concerts, but are extremely easy to fix on a recording. and so you start to fixate and you think take 10 is the one. Then you listen to take 10 and you go, oh, actually, that one has this incredible problem in it. Like my stomach growled. I can't get rid of that. Or this thing happened. I can't fix that. Yeah. But then this other take has this thing that for me is a game over issue, but somehow ends up working. So putting together the takes, at least for me, is challenging. And we played a lot of rondos recordings. So we probably have 200 recordings of a single section, the A section over and over. So what's your strategy when you're handed, just a boatload of takes? I mean, I'm sure before you've recorded things just one take, right? Everything's one take.
Everything's one take.
But to pull back the curtain, most pieces are a lot of takes. And
in classical music,
music more than
jazz.
You might think
jazz. It's not as much like jazz. They usually use the relatively full takes, or they might like pop in a solo, like somebody could re-record a solo or something. But or sometimes they splice together solos, and it's like this really trick thing. But so I have kind of a spreadsheet type thing, and along the left hand column it has the measures 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then I'll listen through. And if something is weird in a measure, I'll like type in that cell. So it's like take 1 on the top, and then measure 1, and or
Oh wow, okay.
And then so I basically have this thing, and then I'll type in stuff as I go, and then I might go through after I finish listening to the take, and then basically when I get done, I can see I have like green and red cells, basically like it's all good, and then there's like something that happens, and basically I can see from the outline like what the section is.
Mm-hmm.
So I've gotten to a place where I've thought, okay, I just don't have a measure 35, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
But I really like this take, but I don't have this measure 35. I can just look and see how many measure 35s I have, and that one I don't have a comment. Listen back, measure 35 is good, plop it in.
Oh, interesting.
And then I can comp the takes from that. But I need the
It's not a table.
It's not. It's not a take. But yeah, I need that whole overview of the thing, and then it actually puts me at ease to see everything and realize, yes, I have played this piece. I can play this piece.
I see. Yeah.
What about you? What's your method?
I do something different as a chronically indecisive person. So I actually use the score.
Yep.
And so I have the score, and let's say I did some chunks from measure 1.
Yeah.
I put the number of the take on the score every time that I started at that place.
Oh, cool.
And then, let's say page 2, measure 10 or something.
Yep.
Take 4 starts there. Take 4 through 8 start there, because you generally start kind of the similar spot. Yeah. So then I do those, and I listen through, and of the ones that are from that section, I think, okay, I like this one. So I try as quickly as possible to assemble a rough take that has the entire piece.
Cool.
And then I go, okay, well, measure 3 kind of sucked. How many measure 3s do I have? I have this one.
Yeah.
But I'll do it in a digital audio workstation. So I'm looking at the score, and then I arrange all the takes in a DAW like Logic.
Yeah.
And I say like, oh, here's measure 35. I have these 4 takes. Let me just listen to each of those.
Yeah.
Because I get overwhelmed if I have to listen to 4 of the same bar.
Yep.
It would kind of confuse me. So first I go with the notes from the session where, Mike T wrote, okay, take 4 is good here. And so I would start with that. And then it was like, it's like Clue. Can you prove me wrong? Is there a take that's better than this one?
Yeah.
And I find that helps because my ears tend to get really tired.
Oh, yeah.
And then surely at some point I'll have listened to all the takes. But then you sort of, as you mentioned when we talked to Ryan, I sort of know my tendencies. So it's like take 1 or 2, it could be pretty good.
Yep.
And then it might be take 11. There's going to be some that are like really bad.
Yeah.
And then there'll be one where I'll say like, all right, last time. And then, it works. So that's what I do. So it's all on the score.
That's cool.
That's because when you're working with someone like Ryan who reads music, I will often give him the take list on the score.
Yeah.
And then I'll go into the spreadsheet and say, okay, that's take 4 from second number 30 to 2 minutes 10 seconds.
Yes.
So what I'm doing is very close to editing it myself. But I'm just not listening to every take all the way through one after the other, because that sort of confuses me.
Yep.
But I like the idea of having the peace of mind that I have everything. And one thing that's always on my mind in the studio, I think it's on yours and was on Ryan's too, is that it's nice to have more than one take where you correctly played something.
Yeah.
So a lot of times he'll say like, we have that covered, but let's do
again.
another one just in case.
Yeah. And I maybe I can kind of amplify that a little bit, because for me, the way that's like a very good recording, a classical musician who records really well and a classical musician who plays concerts very well are most times different styles of playing, different
very
people.
Different, yeah.
And one of the things that I think works well on recording is really going for it in a safe way, like really making these decisions and having the ability to use the recording idiom to its best. Like to be able to do something and take these 2 takes, put them together, that wouldn't have been possible. Like you couldn't have put those 2 things together in a performance. Like a person can't do it. Yeah.
I have a question. Is that allowed? Like ethically? We're recording this Thomas Morley piece.
Yep.
I mean, there's a question we just didn't answer.
Yeah.
Which was, are you allowed to edit together takes of a piece of music? Or, like my students, when they have to submit recordings for something, it has to be a live version. So what the heck are we doing?
Yeah.
Editing a whole bunch of things together. I mean, I think we both agree that you can and should, but what's the thinking behind saying, yeah, it's totally cool in a medium where we have studied to create a really long phrase?
Well, can a novelist press the backspace key? Right? Like, are we expecting people to create something permanent in real time, and then do you want to have the expression of that moment, which is kind of what used to happen, right, in the early days of recording? And you can hear these Josef Hofmann recordings, right, where it's just like that's the take, or these other people who might, okay, that's a missed note, or like that's whatever, and then it's just a live concert experience. But like you were saying, I think you said this a while ago, that there's these like kind of 3 basic things. There's the live concert, there's the recording, and there's the recording of the live concert. That's a 3rd column. Yeah. So for me, I think it's a matter of the point of doing these recordings is a separate idea, that we're trying to realize something in a way that will be somewhat permanent, and it will be curated in a certain way to express something. So if you're going to sit there and make Frankenstein's monster, then it's going to be something that we hope that it's a artistic expression in itself. Yeah. And maybe your artistic expression is, I want this to be a cohesive one take, and that's good too. Yeah, sometimes you can't.
Yeah, I agree. I think that if one awesome thing about playing live is this energy. Yeah. Between the performers and energy between the audience and the performers. And a recording sometimes just doesn't have it. Yeah. Sometimes you can feel it. Like that Simon and Garfunkel Live at Central Park album. You can kind of like feel the energy. Yeah. So if you don't have that energy, what do you have other than accuracy and fidelity? Sure. To some extent. So you might as well do it. And I guess you don't get points for fewer takes. I suppose you pay less money overall, but it's not like somebody's listening to the recording and goes, Mike T, 200 takes, huh?
No, but you would probably psychologically destroy yourself for that.
Yes.
But I think you're kind of getting to what I was saying before is that if you're recording yourself, or if you're recording, the thing that I've found to be the most helpful is to give yourself permission to take the risk to make an artistic statement, because there's no point for me in recording a piece and having my performance be captured flat. I would rather play all the wrong notes and not release the track than play something without a musical statement. So it's the hardest thing to do, but we've got a recording engineer there. He's going to sit there and press record as much as we need until the time's up. Yeah. So let's do it as much as possible. And if I've prepared well enough, right? If I can like actually play the piece through, and I know I can play every bar, and I'm going to go for it in these different recordings or different takes. So, and I think there was a couple times yesterday that we got to a place and we played everything right. And then I think one of us said, can we just do one more take? And this time, let's just go for it.
Yeah, totally.
Like it's good, but we're not looking for good. We're looking for magic. Yeah. And we don't always get it, and we miss a lot of times. But
let's just say one channel had a lot more misses.
But we're looking for the things that we were caring about. Maybe I can keep going on a diatribe here, but one of the things that we kind of care about, like we don't necessarily care about, okay, that's okay, there's the right notes and isn't that nice? Oh, we were together there, isn't that great? The things that we were kind of talking about yesterday were, I really hope that we get like one take with a really exciting ornament.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, we went deep on the ornaments. Also, just the I think sort of a mission we both have as percussionists is to play with the expressivity that people who play other instruments have.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking about with why we want to play this music. It's obviously like there's a place for it, and there's a place for a brand new commission too, right? I mean, you're maybe the best example of that, right? But there's places for these, but the exciting thing to me is that now I can talk with somebody who's on that level of musical expression, because when you listen to those piano master classes or the voice master class or the violin master classes, they're talking about this level of nuance and understanding of the music that, gosh, we don't really get to in lessons very often. We get to the thought of like, okay, well, it looks like you didn't set up the xylophone,
or
okay, I would use a different tom-tom.
Snares on, please.
Yeah, right. Or,
no, snares off.
no, wrong snares.
Turn them off.
Yeah, and our friend Keith Aleo has said this to me a few times, that like we start everybody off on practice pad, and whereas in these early lessons, violin players and piano players who are like serious players, they're getting taught sound production and quality control of sound, and how do you mechanically like make these sounds happen, and we're concerned with bang.
Yeah,
like how do you bang? And and so Keith's, I think, point was start people on a drum, like start to talk about how that gets realized in the practice pad. If you want to go to the practice pad shootout,
I think we talked about this in the practice pad shootout.
But right. So okay, not to reiterate then, but
no, I agree. I agree, and
it's about sound. And so when we're playing Scarlatti,
did you just apologize to a microphone?
I apologize to anyone listening. But then we're actually able to talk about these things, right? Whereas if we're playing a piece that's written for percussion, let's say, then usually we don't have that ability to talk to somebody who has a different level of expertise.
I think there's this thing with contemporary music where there's a kind of performance where somebody's there and says, "Oh, I've never heard that piece before. That person played that piece," versus I'm going to this concert to see so-and-so play this piece. What are they going to do with it?
Yeah, because I know it so well.
Yeah, and hopefully contemporary music, that's the case too.
Sure.
But I think this project, we were entering to some extent into pieces that other people might recognize. So the question on my mind, as I've coached students on arrangements or adaptations of piano music or other music, is, well, what are you going to bring to this?
Yeah.
I
love that thinking.
What are you going to bring to this that's not just like you sound like an emaciated version of a piano, or like it's got to be better on your instrument, I think, than it is.
Yeah, or more colorful.
Or something. Yeah. Or hella fast.
Yeah.
Or like scared. Or you can play that ornament that the pianist can't play.
Yeah, because I felt like that in the... Okay, sorry, now we're just talking. But like I felt like that in the Rameau yesterday, that there are these times where... like at a cadential point, like I'll have an ornament and then you'll have an ornament, or you'll play some phrase and then I'll have an ornament in it. And I feel like if I were a pianist, like one person executing this, I couldn't start an ornament while I was doing what you were doing. But so I there's a few times where I wanted to start my ornament while you were doing something else.
You can, yeah.
Because I can, and we're two people, and we can realize something in a new way. Yeah,
fun.
But I think that's the fun part for me is not when we're getting to the okay, here's how you play the right notes. Okay, well let's do it 5 clicks faster next week. It's more about like, how are we interpreting this, and then what's the implications of that interpretation, right? What are you showing with your interpretation? Because for me, it's like a curator at an art museum, right? You or a docent maybe. Like somebody's curated this exhibit, and I've been instructed on how to interpret this in this structure and this interpretation, and now I have 3 minutes to take people through all of these paintings, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to make sure I show them only these specific things, and they have to connect in a certain way. Otherwise, you get nothing.
I think one thing that was on my mind yesterday, it doesn't happen very often, but it was happening when we were doing the Rameau, which is, man, we normally play this piece. We don't have a way of doing it.
Yeah.
It's just sort of responding to one another, which is really fun.
Yep.
Then you start to think, well, how should we do it on the recording?
We have to do it once.
We have to do it once.
Yeah.
I mean, with the rondo, it's like happens 80 times, but we have to do it once. What's that once going to be?
Yeah.
And that actually is a little scary, you know, to think. I remember Steve Schick talking about that with recording Safa. Why didn't he record the Xenakis piece Safa? Because he's like, well, it's different every time I play it. So why would I want to put something in Sharpie?
Yeah.
So that was on my mind as sort of, that doesn't happen very often. Because sometimes when we record brand new pieces, the thinking is very much like, well, right. I got it.
Yep.
You know, like check mark.
Yeah.
Versus, you know, this is an ephemeral thing. That's kind of fun.
It's fun. And I think that what I was finding during our like prep rehearsals before the session was I felt the most engaged performances from us were the ones where we didn't really decide on anything.
That's right.
And we just like kind of fed off of each other, and sometimes it was we'd like hit a dead end. Yeah. Right. And we couldn't really get ourselves out of it. But the fun part about the recording is that, okay, well, let's try it again. Yeah. But those are we talked about this before, but like, Glenn Gould, my artistic spirit animal, talked about Richter being like one of the great live pianists of all time, but just not a great recording artist. And I think it was because he could just spontaneously do things. And there wasn't a lot of like structure and thought. But for us, I feel like if we did put ourselves in a little rigid thing and we put a stake in the ground, we have to get to here. Sometimes it felt unnatural. Oh yeah. Because then we had to force ourselves back into a place
But that's also sort of the music that we were recording sort of requires that of a performer. The utter consistency is just not keeping with 18th century music, I think. So, I mean, maybe if we were recording, I can't think of a piece where consistency is the all contemporary piece. No, I don't know. Yeah, right. So if you were recording that, maybe we should decide. Yeah. This is what we'll be doing. But in this case, it seemed like it was much more natural to just say, let's see where it goes. Yeah. With the broad framework. So I agree.
And something that we talked about with the Mark Applebaum episode was that I think he said to me once that he really likes it the first time at the premiere for it to be the piece that he wrote, and trying to adhere to the composer's desires as much as possible. And then he said, once that happens, and it happens maybe once or twice, then he feels a lot more comfortable with people taking their own interpretive avenues there. And, how many hundreds of years are we removed from these composers? Various amounts of centuries. So, and we've gone through so many different iterations, and there's a lot of different interpretations of these pieces. So, gosh, I mean, why not take a risk and do something?
Yeah. Fun. So we're looking forward to working on this a little bit. How about, do you have any recording projects coming up that's exciting for you?
Well, I do want to record some solo music. It's been a second since I've been in the solo recording studio, but I think there's something, as Jerry Seinfeld talks about, he wants to work almost every week, right? And he's got a certain mentality, but he wants to like be in front of an audience because that's the way that you do that. And I think recording is the same way.
Yeah, like, you got to be doing it.
Gosh, it could be a really harsh environment for some people. And for me, I mean, we were talking about it last night. Like for me, I felt after that initial 15 minutes of just like hyper awareness, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I relaxed into it. I felt so comfortable
Oh, that's good.
in there because I feel like I record, with some periodicity, I guess. Like there's some regularity to the recording, even though it's not every week.
Mm-hmm.
But you kind of get used to that. Maybe
Well, there's a
level of
rhythm
pressure.
to a recording session,
Yeah.
right? Where it's like we're doing this, it's getting kind of hard. We're doing something that's 1 second long, and we need a break.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
there's this rhythm to the time that is kind of,
Yeah.
it's an interesting kind of focus, and
Yep.
to feel comfortable doing that. Also, it's just for this thing with us, it was just fun,
Super fun.
and it's lower pressure because the world didn't ask for this.
No.
Nobody asked for us to bring a fruitcake to the party,
Right,
But
yeah.
we made
Yeah.
one.
They didn't even ask us to the party.
Yeah. Is there a party?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they told us the wrong day.
That's right,
actually.
yeah.
But we showed up a day early.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, we brought
And we brought the fruitcake.
we brought the Remo. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's a Cyclops for you.
Yeah. So yeah, that's cool. So what's solo? Do you have any big ideas?
I don't know. I was thinking about recording an album of some mallet pieces,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not totally sure like when it's going to happen or whatever. But I do want to get into maybe like we were talking about with Evan and Kevin, right? Like larger scale projects
Mm-hmm,
in addition to the smaller ones. Like I don't want to ever let go of the like what we're doing. Like these, here's a piece, here's a piece, here's a piece.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also these programming ideas that I know you have and I have of like, well, let's put these pieces together and make a statement about the relationship between these pieces.
Mm-hmm.
So there's life. How about you? What's going on with
I don't know
your
yet.
next
This
steps?
is sort of the end of something. I'd like
Yeah.
to do. I'm working on a couple things with my cellist duo partner Hannah.
Oh yeah.
And then I have some solo ideas. I want to record some famous music for the snare drum.
Could we have talked about that music at some
I
point?
think we did. Yeah, I want to do that, which I find to be just a worthless. You know that quadrant of risk and reward, high risk, low reward.
Yeah.
And it's not like trying to overfill an ice cream cone.
Yeah.
Yeah, high risk, high reward. So I somehow I got it in my head that I wanted to do that.
That's super cool.
But
Yeah.
then I'm in that zone now where I want to be inspired by something enough to go like, oh, I want to do that.
But I think that it's similar to what you were talking about before, that there's the implication or the inspiration
Mm-hmm.
of I want to do this. Some people, I feel like they record things because they feel like they need to record it, or
Mm-hmm.
I've heard of other people recording, and so now I will be recording and I will be part of the club. But the idea of like what you're talking about, this is not something that really should be done,
Mm-hmm.
but it's something that I feel like I can contribute
Mm-hmm.
by doing it. Like
Yeah.
I have something to say that hasn't been said before,
Mm-hmm.
and here we go.
Well, it's kind of funny, growing up, I'd always hear, string players and pianists saying, well, it was too soon for me. I was too young to record this piece or too young to
Yeah.
play this.
Yeah,
And I remember always being like, really?
Yeah.
You can?
Right,
You're
good.
I think you're pretty good. And then, now on the other side of those years, you're sort of like, oh, I see exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
Do you have something to say about this piece? Do you have something to say about, velocities or
Right.
something? Like,
Whatever
why
it is.
do it unless you have something to say? Because it's so easy to record
Yeah.
things, and there's so many great recordings now. So, yeah, I think that's what's on my mind. And, I think I like you. I want to build the muscles of
Mhm.
of recording and playing. And for me, recording is more difficult than live performing.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a great way to work on it.
Yeah. It's the only way you can get better is just by doing it. So,
Yeah.
um,
Should we play our own theme music today on the way?
sorry.
Sorry. Oh, take two.
wait, hang on.
Take two.
And then we just overdub the
Yeah,
recording on
it
top,
fades out,
and we're
log
just-
fade out.
Yeah, I think it's tough. I mean, not to keep belaboring the horse here, but I think it's tough for some people to know what we're talking about with making a statement about something, right? Because the the general thought with some students that I've encountered is like all over the country, right? Is my job is to play this piece right.
Mm-hmm.
And I sometimes will feel like if we get into some kind of interpretive talk in a lesson or in a master class or something, then sometimes the discussion shifts to you're telling me what to do, or like this is my way of expressing myself. But so not to get really deep and serious here, but like what's your thought about like that teacher's input in a student thing, and kind of surrogate would be the producer's input into the thing. Like how much should the teacher, or how much, like what's the student's perspective of it? What's the teacher's perspective? What do you feel?
Well, I think it depends on where you are.
Yeah.
Like if you are at a level of musical skill and maturity where you can develop an interpretation, then the teacher's role is to coach you in that interpretation.
Yeah.
And if you're not at that level, then it's the teacher's job to help you develop like a mental model of what could happen, to demonstrate various things, to sort of help you understand maybe the theoretical construct of a piece that might give you ideas. Because an interpretation is not just saying, I feel sad, so I'll play slow, but it's the purposeful highlighting of certain elements of a piece of music that are there.
Yep.
With the intention of tying together certain things in the piece.
Bingo.
So you're saying things, and sometimes it means doing something that is heavily implied should be there, but might not be in the text of the piece. So for me, an interpretation is based in fact.
Yep.
To some extent, and it's not your feelings.
Yeah.
It's the sort of saying, oh, there's this Brahms piece. These are the elements of the piece that I think are innovative or noteworthy. So my approach is going to be to say, well, I'm going to bring out these elements of like, maybe there's fieriness or, maybe there's really room for a suave approach because I've noticed these things that sort of point to that. So I think for me, that's an interpretation. And sometimes the interpretation can be helped by, this is what was going on in this composer's life. Here's who the piece was written for. Yeah. It was written in, 1920. You know what else happened in 1920? Like it was written for an instrument that was just invented. Those things are things that can help an interpretation. So I think the teacher's job somehow is to info dump. Yep. Right. And also gatekeep a little bit, to say like, you can't just go really fast because you want to, or you can't just, do that because you want to. There's got to be a reason that's somehow based in the text. Sometimes an interpreter or a performer is like a tour guide. Yeah. Right. So you can't talk about paintings that aren't in the museum. you generally won't. Yeah. Right. So I think that's a hard thing to do, because at first you need to sort of be saying, oh, let's try it this way. Let's try it this way. But then later you need to be saying, okay, based on what you did, this is the part that's inconsistent. This part doesn't work. Yeah. Right. And I think a good producer says, okay, this sounds like this is what you're trying to do. Mm-hmm. Based on that, this is not working, or everything else you've done has been pointing towards this kind of approach, but this take didn't. So let's try to get another one. That's my approach. But sometimes students just aren't at the level to where they can interpret a piece. Like if you can't do it, you can't have a strong opinion about it. Yeah, because sometimes I see a student who has conflated skill and interpretation. Yeah. Right. So that's a really tough thing, because if a teacher or a producer were to say, I'm really sorry that's this thing can't slow down that much, let's say, but the person can't physically play that, and so then they've created this interpretation around the technique. Yeah. I think it should go really slow because I can't play it any faster. Yeah, but they won't say that, right? Yeah. So then if you're a student and you're getting this input about this interpretation, and it's totally different than what you see in the piece, what's the response? How do you respond to that? My response is usually to try and prove some way that doesn't work.
Yeah.
So for maybe it's working on a harmonic analysis, or maybe it's working on, did you notice this? Did you notice this? Based on those things, it's probably not a good idea, to do this. Or maybe choosing that instrument is not the best choice because of these things.
Yeah.
I think I'm trying to avoid saying because I said so, which is dangerous.
Well, it's not even a good reason.
And I'm also trying to avoid saying do whatever you want, because that's a complete abdication of your job as a teacher.
You're talking as a teacher.
Yeah, exactly. So,
because I think the student, one thing that I really appreciate about you, and not to get like, complimentary, but the, sorry, here it comes. But I think what you do really well, and what makes me feel really comfortable, is if an idea comes up, like if you ask me, how did you think that went? And I say, well, I really feel good, except that this one spot or something. And then you're always willing to try something. Like, hey, let's try it that way. Mm-hmm. Like, let's do it that way, and then we'll see how we feel. Mm-hmm. And I feel like as a student, that kind of yes and mentality is really important. Mm-hmm. Like if somebody telling you to, or somebody suggesting a different interpretation, is only trying to help you, right? And so just saying, oh, cool, let me try that, right? And even if that means you're putting your interpretation on hold for a minute or an hour or the year or for your education, like if you're putting that just to the side, then eventually you might come around. Because how many times have we had things where we graduate from school and we graduate from graduate school and we graduate with a doctorate, and then you go off and teach and you realize, oh no, that person said that and they were so right and I just didn't listen.
Sorry. Yeah, definitely happens all the time.
Yeah.
And but you learn through this kind of A/B testing. Mm-hmm. And at first it's you hope at the end the sort of let's try it this way is like the optometrist, where at the end you're like, those are the same. Yeah. But at first it's sort of like, I see 5 people, or I see an elephant. Yeah. And I think great teachers can teach that way too, where they're like, let's try it this way. What did you notice? Because as you said, you're alone all the time when you practice. So you need to be able to go, okay, why is this one better? Why do I like this? Yeah. Or why is this working? And sometimes, quite honestly, someone, and I'm super guilty of this, you'll have a great idea, but you just like can't do it. Yeah. And the result is that you're just like practicing your technique so that you can do this idea that you have. Yeah. And
that's awesome.
That's the kind of the story with percussion, though. Like, we're so lucky that we have these people that were like, well, I wanted to do this, so I just figured out how to do it. Yeah. Like,
oh, great. Yeah. And it's so inspiring that they have a vision of something, and the technique doesn't match the vision. Yeah. And then they keep the vision.
You keep the vision.
They're not letting the technique morph the vision. Yeah. And I think that comes from a ton of things, but for me it's like almost number one, like that mental practicing stuff. Yeah. We were talking about the practicing music by design or whatever, where you're listening and you're hearing this piece and then you're going for that instead of playing a piece and letting the sound come in passively and then just assuming that that's the piece. So yeah, I think it all comes down to the practicing.
Definitely.
So, okay, last question. How do you feel, Your Honor, how do you feel that you've made the right choice, whatever that might be, for an interpretation?
On the books, that it sort of it has backup in the text of the piece of music. Yeah. Like on the record, that's what I would say. That like, I'm choosing to do this, and there is a reason I can show that it works. Yeah. Off the record, I would say that somebody was moved by it. Yeah. That's how you know you made. Yeah. That's how you know you made the right choice, is that you affected somebody. Yeah. But on the record, I would say sometimes you can affect somebody by just like really changing the piece. Sure. But I would say it's that, it's like, we're going to add these ornaments because, well, that's what people did. Yeah. Or like, we're going to try this really supplely because there's all these like beautiful sixths and thirds. Yeah. So there might be a reason that supports what you're doing. Those are my 2 answers. What about you?
I like I like it. I think that something I've been thinking about a lot this year is taste,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm trying to figure out how do I teach taste. But and then what is my taste? I'm just going to keep saying taste. But but there's something about our experiences and listening to music and these formative things. Like we talked about our favorite recordings,
Yeah.
and it's not necessarily the favorite recording, but it's this favorite 1 second or one note.
In fact, we were just at a record sale, and there was a record that was like 100 great moments in music.
And we
I
were
love
making
that
joke. Yeah.
Yeah, I would buy that.
Right? It's like, okay. But for us, those little things, right? Like it's that sound of that one note, or it's that little turn that Trevor Pinnock does.
Yeah.
Or it's the whatever. I mean, we think about these great recordings as full entities, but really it's just a series of really magical moments.
Yeah, that's right. Well, your interpretations, I think, are very pianistic. And maybe it's because you like piano music, or you listen to a lot of piano music. And so pianists have a particular way, right? Yep. And, some people play with a real vocal kind of interpretation, and some people play really musically, just in general.
Yep.
And you find a way, like with you, it's always like, how are we going to explore, this counterpoint in this piece,
Yeah. And so I think that's like taste, is
that's
coming,
taste. Yeah.
And those tastes will start to like get packed in, and they start to become part of your bloodstream. And then the decisions, like for me, I feel like something that I can feel really strongly is whether something feels authentic to me. So if I hear something, and I'll do a lot of listening back and recording and stuff just here in the practice space, and if something isn't right, I'm going to feel the conflict, and it's intuitive in some way.
Yeah. But when you learn it, you have to say it out loud.
Yeah.
I think like, ooh, I don't like that. Maybe it's because, of
give it
this
a second.
of this thing. And I think that's a great, some of the best lessons I ever had with teachers were when I recorded myself and then we listened to my recording together, and the teacher would say, I heard this.
Yeah.
And I would go, oh, I heard this, and okay, let's calibrate that. Yeah. But I think taste, you're totally right.
And that's what we're doing, essentially. Like at a certain point, once we've got all the notes recorded, we're just trying to figure out like what's the thing that we want to show, and what we want to show is going to be different than somebody else. And sometimes somebody's going to come in and say, well, yeah, but you didn't even notice the frame on that picture, right?
That's right.
And then you think, oh my gosh, I never thought about the frames.
Yeah.
And then that's like one of those really genius artists, and you follow them, and maybe that inspires you, or maybe it repels you.
Yeah.
And when it comes down to it, really we need this wealth of recordings of these pieces in classical music.
I think so.
Because there's so many lenses through which you can interpret these pieces.
Yeah, and since this is something I've written about before or talked about before, since the sheet of music is insufficient to perform the piece, you can kind of triangulate what the piece is through a number of different interpretations.
Yeah.
Like what's common in all of these? That must be something speaking towards what the piece of music is, because the score is generally not enough. Like so I think that having a lot of different people's interpretations is probably the best thing that could happen.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
So I hope ours is one of them.
I hope so. I hope it happens. I mean, publicly talking about it is a good way to make sure it happens.
Yeah, or at the very least, like, we can be shamed for not doing it.
Yeah. So I wonder what kind of music we'll fade into right now.
Should we play, and then let's see what we put over the top of our playing?
Yeah.
That's it for MikeDrop episode 21. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.